Right. Hi, everyone, and welcome. Feel free to drop where you're tuning in from in the chat. I'm from Los Angeles, so that's where I'm at, and would love to see where you guys are coming in from. But my name is Renee. I'm with Qualio. I'll be your moderator for today's session. Everything you need to know about the FDA QMSR. So that means I'll be keeping our speakers on schedule today and receiving your questions throughout the session, and I'll be passing them along. Please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen to send in your questions. If you have a burning question about the QMSR or you want to dive deeper into something on a particular slide, just add your question in the Q&A box and I will pass it along to our speakers at a suitable moment during the presentation. We want today to be an interactive experience that's as insightful and rewarding as possible. So don't hesitate to reach out. And if we don't cover your question, we will get back to you after the session to ensure you get an answer. Now I'll introduce your expert speakers for today. So first up, we have Sumantha Kondabolu, is a senior business partner and my colleague at Qualio. She provides regulated life science companies with targeted support to help them optimize their quality systems and embed lasting compliance. She has 20 years of QARA experience across the medical device and pharmaceutical sectors and has built quality management systems for compliance with the FDA QSR, Canada's medical devices regulations, and sorry, just getting a little bit of feedback. And the MD-SAP and the MDR, IVDR, and much more. Next, Ewan Lee is a medical device regulation expert with 15 years of industry experience. He heads up the North American medical team at DQS and the global notified body. As well as specializing in orthopedic products, Ewan is an ISO 13485 and MD-SAP lead auditor and a certified regulatory specialist for medical devices. Let's look at our agenda for today. So we have three main areas to cover. First, Sumantha will kick us off with the core focus of today's session, what the QMSR is, what its requirements entail, and what it means for your operations as the launch date of February 2nd, 2026 gets closer and closer. Ewan will then be going deeper into ISO 13485 because the QMSR is primarily based on ISO 13485 requirements. He'll be exploring how the standard forms an important bridge between QMSR compliance and how securing ISO 13485 certification is a great way to minimize the burden of the QMSR switch. As for the final 15 minutes of today, my colleague Colin in the Qualio product team will be providing a sneak preview of something we're very excited about, Qualio's new compliance AI tool. Our new platform is really unique in the life science quality industry and cuts out the vast majority of your QMSR prep work and gives you an accelerated route to rock solid QMSR compliance. Colin will be walking you through how that works before we wrap up today. So please stay tuned. And without further ado, I'll pass it off to Sumantha to run through what QMSR means for your business.
Thank you, Renee. Hello, everyone. I'll be presenting on what the Quality Management System Regulation or the QMSR means for your business. This change represents a significant shift in how the FDA approaches quality systems, specifically in terms of international alignment. So to understand the impact, let's begin why the QMSR is being introduced. So here you can see FDA 21 CFR Part 820, which is widely adopted regulation that structures the quality system management system of thousands of American medical device manufacturers. But it's also nearly 30 years old. When it launched in 1997, FDA 21 CFR Part 820 borrowed from many aspects of ISO 13485 1996 and was largely identical. Here you can see that FDA 21 CFR Part 820 hasn't kept pace with ISO medical device QMS regulatory requirements since then. The FDA has been planning to get back into locksteps with ISO the 13485 2016 since 2018. But the complexity of the QMSR project, coupled with the impact of COVID-19, has delayed the harmonization drive. Now it's time for us to start seriously talking and planning for it. By using the QMSR to bring in the elements of ISO 13485, the International Medical Device Quality Management Standard is the ninth year of its current revision. The FDA hopes to freshen up its medical device quality system requirements as well as harmonize them with the most recent medical device quality management expectations of the international authorities. And before we go ahead, we will learn about the benefits. So let's talk about the benefits of the QMSR alignment. It brings US requirements in line with global best practices. It simplifies international expansion for US companies by aligning with ISO 13485. It also makes it easier for foreign companies to enter the US market. Overall, it moves us towards a more unified global approach to the medical device regulation. Going ahead with what's changing. So this is important. So what exactly is changing under the QMSR? This is where we will be learning more on the key terminology. So FDA has been keen on to point out that the 21 CFR Part 820 and the ISO 13485 are still substantially similar. And some processes and documentation expectations are there, along with the FDA QSIT inspection process, like management review, or if you take internal or supplier audits, no longer exempt from the inspection. While the framework stays largely the same, the delays and how they are impacted are where the businesses need to pay close attention. Moving ahead, here you can see the contents. Here you can see that the subparts C to O are reserved from the QSR, so the quality system regulation, but it's in subparts A and B where the changes in the new QMSR can be seen. So if you see here, the general provisions as well as the supplemental provisions, which we have listed in the various different sections that are coming from the FDA 21 CFR Part 820, and the changes are the reserved for the QSR. Now comes the QMSR cheat sheet. So we have put together a sheet where you can see which provides a quick comparison between the original quality system regulation and as well as the ISO 13485 2016 and then the new QMSR final rule. The key takeaway is that the most requirements are substantially similar between the existing QS regulation and the ISO 13485, which is the foundation of the QMSR. Where there are differences, they are mostly addressed through specific sections added in the QMSR, like if you see 820.35, that is 820.35 for control of records, and then 820.45 for the device labeling and packaging controls. While the overall structure aligns with the ISO 13485, the FDA has reinforced or clarified specific areas to meet its regulatory expectations, and those are clearly flagged here in the QMSR column. Moving ahead with the new sections. So the QMSR introduces several new sections in the updated regulation, each designed to align more directly with ISO 13485 while still covering FDA specific expectations. Here you can see that the section 820.7, that is the incorporation by reference. This formally brings ISO 13485 2016 into the regulation. It means the standard is now part of the US law through reference rather than being paraphrased or rewritten. Similarly, the section 820.10 QMS requirements. This outlines the core expectations for a complaint handling, or maybe the compliance with the quality management system, and links to other applicable FDA requirements, including things like UDI, design and development, and reporting obligations, along with the section 820.35 control of records. This supplements ISO record keeping provisions with specific FDA expectations like complaints files, UDI documentation, as well as confidentiality. Finally, the section 820.45, which is the device labeling and packaging controls. This is an area where FDA chose to retain more perspective requirements since ISO doesn't fully cover that FDA expects around labeling inspections as well as packaging verification. So these additions ensure that the QMSR supports global alignment while still maintaining the FDA's ability to regulate according to the US specific health needs. And then the scope. So the strong manufacturing focus of the QSR will be broadened in the QMSR. So the QMSR applies to the manufacturers, but also contract sterilizers, installers, relabelers, as well as remanufacturers, repackagers, along with the specification developers and initial distribution of foreign manufacturers too. So if you operate in one of these adjacent areas, you may need to think about FDA compliance in a way you didn't have to before. Here you can see that the two river metaphor is a useful way to think about this. Two existing standards will merge together in the QMSR, mainly borrowing fresh elements from the ISO 13485, but some pieces of 21 CFR Part 820 maintained and new elements built in. Going ahead with the definitions, where I was talking about the definitions in the earlier slide. The content of your documents doesn't need to fundamentally change, and there may be some informal hangover of the old terms of for a long time, while due to their familiarity, but it's now important to ensure your QMS reflects this new terminology to show you have digested and applied the QMSR shift. Do a thorough audit of your document stack and start updating structure, titles, content as appropriate. And key important point to highlight here is integrate regulatory compliance risk alongside your safety and performance risk processes. Acknowledging ISO 14971's broader definition of risk. For example, are you doing everything you need to do proactively safeguard your organizational state of compliance? In the same way, you would integrate your device itself. So, this is where you will be questioning and identifying and performing the risk assessment across the quality management system regulations to comply with those regulations across your quality management system. The QMS requirements, the quality management system requirements, where incomplete QMS, adulterated device, ensure you don't neglect those areas where FDA requirements go beyond ISO 13485. For example, like UDI and regulatory authority reporting processes, pay special attention to your design controls, as existing QSR requirements are completely replaced by ISO 13485 design controls. Then the control of records. This is again a key important area where you have to focus. So let's take a look at the QMSR requirements and control of records outlined in section 820.35. Record approval processes replaced by 13485 requirements, but the QMSR also goes further to mandate date, signature on approvals. For example, like 21 CFR Part 11 remains applicable if you do this digitally. CAPA, that is the corrective preventive action requirements, replaced by ISO 13485 requirements. Specific focus on complaint records. You need to include associated CAPA records, mandate investigation for the complaints involving, which are specifically for the device, packaging, and labeling failures. You also need to and it also mandates centralized complaint procedures and coordinating and unit to ensure complaint handling is standardized across your organization. Outlines previous slides additional UDI requirements that go beyond ISO. So you must meet ISO 21 CFR Part 820 3.35 requirements as well as clause ISO 13485 4.2.5 requirements. With that said, the device labeling and packaging controls. So this is another specific area you need to focus on. So section 820.45 will require procedures that provide a detailed description of labeling and packaging activities to ensure the integrity, inspection, storage, and operations for labeling and repackaging. The main sections, that is the 820.45, will require our UDI and UPC expiration date, storage instructions, as well as the handling instructions and processing instructions. So you need to ensure your labeling inspection processes include a manual physical touch point alongside your automated checks. With that said, I will hand over to Rennie, and from there onwards, Yuan will be taking it over.
All right. Thank you so much, Samantha, for running us through the structure of the QMSR and everything that's changing in February. I'll now pass it to Ewan to take things a step further and share how ISO 13485 certification is a key step you should be thinking about before the transition date. All right, over to you, Ewan.
Yeah, if you could go to the next page. All right, so thank you again, Samasa, for sharing those insights about the difference between the QSMR and the 1345. And then, Renee, if you could go to the next page, please. Yeah, so what are we talking about when it comes to the 1345? Yeah, the final ruling is specifically calling the 1345 2016 and essentially making this international recognized standard to be the backbone of FDA's quality system expectation. But what does that mean for industry? Or put it this way, what does it mean for you to have a 13485 certificate, right? First and foremost, you will have a much stronger position to comply with FDA's final ruling and to be more in line with the updated requirements. So if you go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so let's get into the details, right? So here is a vivid slide telling you by having the 13485 certificate, what does it mean for you when the February date has come? It's low impact because by getting the 13485 certificate, you already have the documents updated, your process more in line with the standard, and albeit there will be some additional FDA specific requirements and definitions, but that's a small portion of the change you need to fine tune. Versus on the other hand side, if you don't have the 13485 certificates, well, the challenge is a bit higher, meaning you will have to have considerable document and process revamping. You need to probably consolidate, cross-reference, delete, or cross-train your resource because of that. And also, because of the lack of 13485, and by association, you probably lack the strong emphasis on the risk management. So if you go to the next slide.
Ewan, while we're on the subject, we have a couple audience questions.
Okay.
So the first one, with respect to the with respect to compliance with ISO 9000, clause 3 definitions, does that mean that the FDA now works to the definitions for correction, corrective action, and preventative action as detailed in ISO 9000. It's also on the left-hand side of the Q&A. Sorry if I got through that.
Yeah, no, let me get to the Q&A. With respect to the compliance with class 3, does that mean that? Okay, hold on, let me try to do this. That's a great question. I don't know the answer to this, but my opinion, the corrective action, the correction versus the preventive action, you have the definition in 13485. So I would highly recommend to go to 13485 for the definition, and by this final ruling, the specific referencing, I'm gonna bet FDA is gonna adapt the 13485 definition. Can't say too much about the 9000. Maybe that's the same definition.
Okay, nice. I would love to get another question here too. We have a UKMD manufacturer that put in their software as medical device in UK, EU, and US market. For UK and EU, they have ISO 13485 2016 and EU MDR certification. For the US, they have a FDA 510K clearance. Do they need a specific ISO 13485 2016 certification for US, or is the one they have for the EU and UK enough? You'll also see that one on the left-hand side if you want to read through it.
No, I thought. So thank you very much, Renee. And this is a great question. So disclaimer, obviously I'm biased, right? Come here, get your 1345 certificate, more than welcome. But more importantly, the right question to ask for you is, well, you've been through a lot, right? You have the MDR, you have the UK, and you have the 510K clearance. Well, I mean, 1345 would be I don't know, walk in the park for you. So you are definitely well prepared. I guess it's really up to you. Maybe you will take into consideration of cost, but from the compliance standpoint, I mean, just based on your statement, I think you're more than ready for having the 13485 certificate. So hope I answered your question.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think we'll keep on moving. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. All right, so go to the next. Okay, all right. All right, so this is once again, I work for the certification body, notified body, if you will. So I want to get this out as a disclaimer. By having 13485 certificate, either from us or from other CB, does not guarantee you the FDA compliance. Okay, I hope nobody has any misunderstanding on this. However, if you go to the next slide, we will continue emphasize on some of the benefits, like this one particularly, because of FDA is now embracing the same philosophy of the risk-based approach, which is the main update for the 2016 version of 13485. So by association, this is basically to recommend or suggest you to get in line with ISO 14971, the risk management standard. And what does that mean is this: once you adapt to the 14971, your system will have a better design control, documentation, and post-market surveillance activities. In short, you will have a through and through risk-based approach in every corner of your quality management system. So I see that definitely as a benefit compared to before. The QSR is more isolated, very narrowed. Yes, there are risk reference, but that's more on the design side of things. But now with the new final ruling, the adaptation to 13485, it is a formal requirement for you to have a systemic approach when it comes to risk. So if you go to the next slide, please. Yeah, and then not to mention, right, if you get the 13485 certificate, that's going to be a good practice, because during the process you would have streamlined your compliance by building credibility with FDA inspectors. So this is where, to my opinion, if you are in the CB or in the TIC field long enough, you will realize auditor is a set group of talents. meaning, you can just remember their name, forget about which notified body or CB they work for, because it's the same group of people. It's a very insidious talent pool, if you ask me. And it's entirely possible some of them will switch side to FDA to become their new final ruling FDA inspector because of their knowledge on the 13485. So if you get a 13485 certificate in front of the inspector, chances are they recognize that. They will take that, and they will take that into consideration when they do the inspection. Once again, not automatic compliance, but it will get a little bit of credibility from the inspector. And also it will help reduce inspection frequency under the FDA's inspectional authority discretion, because we all know this mindset from FDA, the least burdensome approach. That's essentially giving them the flexibility to adjust their audit cycle or the audit frequency, meaning if they have evidence that you are good, you are compliant, or for this case, you have a third-party certification for 13485, then they tend to assign a lower priority to you versus someone who's going through this the first time, never had a 13485 certificate. Guess what? They probably will put a little bit of scrutiny to that manufacturer instead. And then last but not least, with the risk approach with the 13485 QMS in line, then that's going to ease up your submission for the 510K, PMA, if you will, and also by showing the robust design, manufacturing, and also the PMS controls in place. That's going to win a lot of, once again, credibility with the inspectors. So, but obviously, yeah, please go to the next slide. Obviously, if you are seeking for the ultimate freedom from FDA inspection, MDSAP, right? That's the official program as of today, can really get you off the list for FDA inspection, but that's a whole different animal. Yeah. So, yes,
while we're on the subject, we have a question about MDSAP. So will there be an implementation transition timeline from February 2026? How about this impact on MDSAP? So yeah, if you could chime in with that, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, wonderful question. Answer is everything is up in the air. I don't know. Just waiting for the further guidance on that. But if you ask me to speculate, which I will, is MDSAP is going to be the next program to change. Simple as that, because now you have what if manufacturer holds a 13485 certificate versus MDSAP? What is going to be the inspection frequency, or how should we approach with FDA inspection? So I would expect FDA to come back with more clarity on the difference between the 13485 and the MDSAP, and maybe a little bit of more benefit if you have the MDSAP, because now I'm talking about the resource restraints, right? I mean, they have pretty much the same pool of inspectors. Do you want to use them on the 13485, or you want to use them on the MDSAP manufacturers? So I would say probably they will cut you even loose on the MDSAP if you have the MDSAP certificate. But once again, that is first and foremost something we can offer as well, but that's a whole different animal for getting the MDSAP. So back to the slide. One thing that was highlighted, and also I add a little bit of my own take from the final ruling, is cost saving, right? So this is my take on the cost saving. First is elimination of redundant quality system. It actually has been very common in the past where you are a US manufacturer, you deal with FDA, then inevitably you have to have everything from the 21 CFR 820 referenced in your procedure, while for the international markets, everything is 13485. So you essentially are running two document systems, and not to mention by association, you have two training programs, and then you have to train your auditors to react to FDA inspection versus the 13485 inspection. So that's the first point of cost saving. And then obviously with the harmonization to the 13485, you will have streamlined audits, regulatory inspections. That will be more cost saving because you don't have to host them, multiple times, or you can host them multiple times, but essentially it's the same scope of the audits. And then followed by potential savings through the fewer late stage design changes, production NCs, the recalls, field actions, etc. Because, like I said earlier, before the QSR has those pockets for emphasizing the risk management or risk mindset, pretty much just on the design, but now it's throughout your entire QMS. So by doing that, by implementing that, that's going to be a cost saving because your system is running more productive, more effective. And last but not least, it's going to be a huge benefit, cost saving for more efficient supplier and purchasing control. Because that's one of the change, or that's one of the expected change is for your suppliers. They are going to go through this final ruling as well as you do. So it will be their benefit to get the 13485 compliance as well, just to ease up the transition. Okay, if you go to the next slide. Okay, so obviously the global readiness, that's another good example for the benefits, just like the other guy who asked a question, guy or gal asked a question earlier. You have, the MDR, you have the UK, you have the 510K. That means you have global footprint, but as you can tell everybody else, it's a hustle because historically FDA is just want to run its own course, doesn't care about the harmonization. That means you probably have to have multiple groups to deal with the regulatory challenges. And from my time back in industry, I work for the International Regulatory Affairs Group versus there's a core group called FDA Regulatory Group, or the US domestic. So, but now you don't have this anymore. You don't need to have this anymore because they're speaking the same language. Everything is based off the 13485, and also it bridges FDA and international requirements. A lot of the foreign regulatory bodies, they build up their specific requirements on the 13485, and now FDA is finally catching up. And not to mention, 13485 will be a key entry point into programs such as MDSAP for you to expand to Canada, to Australia, Japan, etc. So QMSR alignment should make your MDSAP work even simpler, if you will. So if you go to the next slide.
Before we move to the next slide, we have another question. So what happens if a company passes its ISO 13485 audit, but fails to meet QMSR specific expectations? Will the FDA be notified?
Oh, that's easy. No. As of right now, the CVs such as DQS were not obligated to notify FDA. It's not like MDSAP. Once again, MDSAP is the program where official collaboration with FDA is obligated. So it will be a whole different story, meaning, if you go into a MDSAP, you have findings or you have failures to the category 4 and above, then as an AO, like DQS, we will be obligated to stop the audit and start communicating to FDA to inform them, and they will choose the right legal course to enforce. So not for 13485. That's why I really highly recommend to go through the 13485 certificate with the CB. that way it's always like it's almost like a test run, right? You know where your strengths is versus your weaknesses. That's where you can spend a little bit more time to improve your QMS until the FDA inspection. So,
Awesome. Thanks.
all right. And then the last slide from me, other benefits, right? Because I know everyone is super home in on the, the compliance, on the, the details, the technical. But don't forget, with the 13485 certificate, you will have a stronger credibility with regulators, partners, and investors, right? This is specifically true for smaller manufacturers or for component manufacturers, suppliers, where M&A or acquisition is realistic. This is a good way to show your level of QMS, your compliance, etc. And then obviously with 13485, that's almost like a guarantee when it comes to the due diligence in partnership for a medical device. And then you will have a faster onboarding by the OEM, once again, for supplier, for component manufacturer, in on top of following the requirements or specs from your customer. Having the 13485 in this industry is almost a guarantee requirement. So, and not to mention more favorable regulatory perceptions, right? Even if it's not a formal substitute for FDA inspection, but having the 13485 certificate is a, once again, global recognition, global language. So here are some of the other benefits. And with that, I'm going to turn back to Renee, and feel free to ask questions.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, Ewan. I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Colin on the Qualio product team. So for us at Qualio, the QMSR compliance challenges we've discussed today aren't just something for medical device companies to think about. As an EQMS provider with hundreds of medical device customers, understanding where regulatory professionals are being challenged by quality and compliance and how to alleviate that burden is a critical part of our product development roadmap. We've been considering these challenges and working on something really exciting to share with all of you. So over to you, Colin.
Thank you very much, Renee. Am I able to share my screen if possible? I don't know if you have to stop sharing first, Renee. Hi, everybody. My name is Colin Feely, by the way, while we're figuring out this technical part of it. I'm a colleague of Samantha and Renee, and I've also been recently working with Johan as well. So I'm just going to share. Okay. So hopefully you guys can see, the presentation there. Go to slideshow. So thank you very much for your time today. I'm just going to introduce a new product area that we're working on, very timely in terms of compliance and regulatory with the QMSR upcoming for you guys in February. And this is a problem that, when speaking to our customers in life sciences and researching the market, we've seen something consistently coming up more and more recently, and that's that the regulatory complexity is increasing. So changes to standards like you have for QMSR, new standards, merging of standards, new technologies like AI come with new regulations. So much so that half of life sciences leaders now cite regulation as the #1 external risk. At the same time, in 2024, there was over 45,000 life sciences firms in the US, with an increase in 7%. So regulatory expertise is limited. Internally, for organizations like yourself, and like Johan was talking about a while ago, even for the auditors, there's only so many people available with the skills and the knowledge in these spaces, and they're complex. So the capacity to manage the complexity is struggling to scale. Even with major investment in compliance, organizations can still struggle to get consistent real-time views of where they stand. We often see fragmented, reactive processes, and the certification process and audits is slow. We all know of audit season. Ourselves in Qualio just went through 3 last week, so 9001, 27101, and 27701, and our quality team are wrecked this week after it. And you know yourselves that there's a lot of prep, a lot of work, it's a slog, getting everything ready and prepared. And even still, some people go into these expecting to find issues or expecting that findings will come up. And the other thing that we're seeing recently as well is that a lot of people are starting to explore AI and how especially generative AI or large language models can help in the compliance and regulatory space. Now, although a lot of people are starting to do it, we do see a lot of uncertainty into how people can do this in a secure, consistent, compliant way. So that led us to kind of look at, well, how are people looking at or managing their compliance today and managing this complexity? And we see a few very common approaches repeatedly coming up. Manual approaches, spreadsheets, share drives, consultants, flexible, but it's time consuming, hard to scale. And if key people leave your organization, the whole compliance program can be in jeopardy. We see people using their QMS to try and stretch it into a compliance tool. And this can work well for maybe some of the more simple standards like 9001, but as it gets more complex, this gets more challenging. And there can be kind of, again, a fragmented and incomplete experience. As I said, people are trying to use public LLMs like ChatGPT or other to help them with compliance, but there are risks. What's happening with my data? If we have sensitive information I put up there, is it being trained, etc.? You know, traceability, did someone use an LLM or not? And we see inconsistent use of these in teams. And then finally, we do see the InfoSec tools like Vanta and Drata. These are very powerful, they're expensive, and they're built for InfoSec really and not for life sciences. They don't necessarily map to the standards, markets, or evidence that you're expected. Now, in reality, we see a combination of a lot of these in play. So this is where the problem starts to become clear. Right? So regulatory complexity down the bottom, the purple line. So I'm a little bit colorblind, and these hues are quite subtle, so bear with me. Even though red green colorblind, I don't think there's any red green here, but regulatory complexity is increasing, right? We stated that, new standards, changes in standards, that's the little purple line going up here. Regulatory and compliance expertise we've talked about, that's limited, and it's struggling to scale and grow. And compliance readiness, we're going to define compliance readiness as the ability for your teams to identify, interpret, and act on regulatory requirements. So it's not just about headcount, it's about knowledge, understanding, visibility, and the capacity to act and respond. But as a result of the increasing complexity and the regulatory and compliance expertise struggling, we're seeing compliance readiness decline. Now, not because you're not capable of doing it, but because the capacity and the regulatory knowledge isn't there. And that's one of the reasons you're here today, is to learn about the QMSR and gain that knowledge. And the tools you have don't really fill that gap. We have a lot of fragmented point-in-time manual processes that can make it even harder to keep up with complexity. So that's what we're calling here the compliance deficit, or maybe compliance tax might be another term you could use here, and that brings risk of regulatory findings, market delays, and increasing the cost of compliance. So that's why we're looking at bringing the power of AI into life sciences securely. So a place that is purpose-built for life sciences, where all your compliance activities can happen in one place, and it doesn't take months to prepare for an audit, where a gap assessment can be run with the click of a button, and regulatory knowledge within AI is available in your workflows, securely, traceable, consistently with human in the loop. So where the compliance program is live, connected, gives your teams and your leadership real-time visibility and confidence into your compliance status. So really increasing your compliance readiness, even as complexity grows. So that's what we're trying to build. And before I jump in, so I know there's a number of customers on today and people who won't know Qualio as well. So just to orientate you a little bit about who we are, we're a cloud-based platform used by close to 700 life sciences organizations today, from early stage startups to in-market organizations with multiple products. And we help them launch and scale life-saving products faster, with quality, and now compliance built in from day one. So we started with the QMS, which you see on the left here, a comprehensive, scalable system that connects documents, training, events, design controls, and suppliers. So all you need for quality management, all in a single compliant workspace. And now we're expanding into the adjacent area of compliance management, which is where our compliance intelligent solution fits. So built for teams managing compliance across complex frameworks, product lines, and markets who want to move from reactive audit to continuous AI-supported compliance. So I'm going to jump into the demo/showcase in a second. But just before, to orientate you as I go through it, I'm going to cover 4 key points: pre-built frameworks, validated frameworks and controls, also validated, one-click AI-powered gap analysis, closed-loop remediation, and then real-time continuous compliance. So there are the 4 points I'm going to hit as I jump into the product. So I can see my own screen as I'm going. Okay, so let's take a look. This is the compliance area of our product. And in here are the framework. So framework is another word for a standard. And this is what separates us from generic GRCs tools that make you start from scratch. We have them pre-built into the product for you, covering the main frameworks needed for med device, pharma, and biotech. So 9001, we have 13485, MDSAP, you'll see more down here, 4201, ICH Q9, Q10, E6. And here's a small sample of the ones we're building out. And we also have the QMSR, which we've been speaking about today. So jumping in here, you will see that we have all of the requirements that Samantha was talking about earlier, 10.1, 10.2, 10.3, 10.4, 35, and 45. And aligned to these are what we call controls. Controls are how we recommend that you meet a given requirement. And you can see here the information that Samantha gave earlier. This is in alignment with ISO 13485, clause 4.2.5. So the controls allow you to organize information that you show pertaining to a given requirement, and then they can be reused across multiple requirements and multiple frameworks, so that once you're set up against a given control, that work is done for you. So these frameworks and controls are created by internal SMEs like Samantha and validated by external life sciences experts. But you can also create your own, such that you can set this up to meet your needs and your markets. Okay, so that covers the frameworks and controls. And then jumping into single-click gap analysis, and I'm going to jump into 13485 for this because this is a framework we have enabled and been working on. So again, this is the 13485 framework. It lists all of the requirements of 13485 and the controls mapped to those requirements. Now, this has already been run, but for the purposes of example, I'm going to explain it. To run a gap analysis, what you would do is hit this button. If I hit this, what will happen is we will scan your QMS and we will find any relevant policies, procedures, and work instructions and map them to the definitions for you for each control. So as an example, I'll jump into complaint management. We can see here that there's an SOP for customer complaints. There's a work instruction for creation of complaints. There's a template for complaints, and there's an SOP on communications. Anywhere there's a symbol here, we can see that AI is what did this. So it scanned the QMS, scanned all of the documents in here, all of the events, all of the templates, and it has pulled back relevant things to your definition so that you don't have to do it. You can then remove or add as you see fit. So we've added a couple here ourselves afterwards. And once that's run, it will then run a gap assessment. And you can see here, there are 6 gaps, and it has read those documents and assessed them against the given control. So a good example, I'll run down to the bottom here, is this gap here, where it's saying that the current procedure states that the target closure time is 90 days, but it doesn't go any further than that. It doesn't go into the severity and giving you different timeframes for severity. So it has run a gap analysis, and this will do this for an entire framework for you. So essentially, it's like a desk audit. And if there is any issues found or any gaps found, that requirement will be marked as attention required, so you know that work needs to be done, and you can see the gaps here. Just jumping back in. So what we have done is essentially kind of like a desk audit, where we looked at all your policies, procedures, and work instructions and run a gap analysis on them. Something that could have taken weeks to organize and check, this can do in minutes and hours for you. Okay, so once the gap analysis is done, and as well, I guess I'll just show you too, across the whole framework, you can see all of the gaps listed on this tab, going from high severity through medium and low, so you can look at the gaps all in one place. Just jumping back to our complaint management, and let's look at closed loop remediation. So within each gap, and I'm going to go back to this one, there is not only a description of what the gap is, but a recommendation on what to do to close that gap. In this case, it is stating that we should have different timeframes for different severities with different number of days. So high severity, 30 days, low severity or medium 60, and low 90. Okay. Now, we can choose to dismiss or resolve the gap from here, and the information we record in that is made available to the AI the next time it runs, so it's given more context. But in this case, this is something we definitely want to do. So what we can do is create a task. And this is assigned to Austin, who's not on the call today, another one of my colleagues, and it's for him to revise SOP 17. And it's given him the information here to put in the different timeframes for the different severities. So Austin can go off and complete that task. We can track it, and we can see it here. And once he is complete, we can close that gap. Now, the other thing that will happen is when Austin completes the update to the SOP, that will be routed for review and approval. When it's approved, this will automatically pick up the new version and it will rerun an assessment to see if there's any new issues, thus closing the loop for you. So that covers closed loop remediation. We're not just giving you where the gaps are, we're giving you guidance on how to fix them and allowing you to assign tasks to your team to track and complete. It gives you a clear line of sight to your milestones, and you can proactively close the gaps and reduce the risk of findings during an audit. Now, moving on to continuous monitoring. So what happens as processes get executed in your quality management system or in any part of your business? Records are produced, and records are key to showing in any given audit to show that you are meeting what you said you do in your policies, procedures, and work instructions. Now, typically this is done before an audit. You're going to go off and collate everything and try and find it. But here we have built the ability to watch your QMS, and as things happen, automatically collate them and assess them. So in this case, we have a workflow called complaints. We call workflows events in Qualio. And anytime a complaint is created and gets to a status of closed, it will automatically be picked up, assigned here, and a gap assessment will be run on it. Again, if a gap is found, it will be put in the gaps tab, and the requirement will be marked as attention required, so you know that you need to do work in this space. So instead of scrambling before audits to try and find that information, the system watches your QMS in real time, so you can act on them and you are always audit ready. So that covers continuous monitoring. And this is all possible because we have an integrated end-to-end platform, your QMS and compliance management working together as one system. They're not disconnected tools, but we're also leveraging the deep knowledge of AI and bringing it to your teams in your workflow. So this all gives you visibility. If I jump back out here, to your compliance status for your whole organization, a system you can rely on for all of your compliance needs. So you can see here, we're implementing against these given standards, and this standard is one we've implemented and are monitoring against. Okay, so that covers my little showcase, and I am going to return to my slides for a second. Sorry, wrong way. So I will share again. Thank you very much. So,
oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just gonna.
We've got some questions if you want to touch on them really quick.
Maybe I'll just finish. I'll finish off my last slide because I'm in full flow. So and then we'll go to questions. So what we built isn't just automation; it's a new approach to compliance in life sciences, giving real-time visibility centralized in one location. We're bringing the power of AI and that deep regulatory knowledge embedded within it to bear on one of the most complex, resource-intensive challenges in the industry, and doing it securely. Traceability when AI is used, and human in the loop. So the transformation is scaling the regulatory expertise through AI and increasing your compliance readiness as such. And this is how we're closing that gap we showed earlier. Results, faster audits, faster time to market, fewer findings, less tools, less cost, and a clearer path to compliance. And then finally, if you are interested, and you can jump to questions then, we do have more information on our site, qual.io, where you can jump in there, and there's even a little tryout you can do, and you can sign up for a demo or more information as well if you want. So I'd encourage you to go there. And there are some questions, Renee, I believe. Do you want me to pass back to you in terms of the screen share, or?
Yeah, you pass back to me, or let's get through the questions, and then I'll handle the screen share stuff. Does the compliance intelligence tool rate the severity of the gap found, or does the user review the gap assessment results and then assign severity? Can the user toggle the severity level if it's been assigned by the AI, or maybe this is something the AI learns over time?
So good question. The severity is assessed by the AI. Today, it is you cannot interact or change that assessment. So the AI will assess it and give it the severity as it stands today.
Gotcha. All right, cool. Another question, I think you did touch on this, but will this meet the requirements for internal auditing, i.e. can I use this in place of an internal auditor and subsequent evaluation report? I believe you kind of referenced like this is like a desk audit, but if you want to elaborate on that.
You could use it for the purposes of internal audit, helping you organize, collate, and have the information available for an internal audit. There will be still requirements for an internal audit that would apply, like, reviewing your own area. Internal audits, you get people from different areas to review different areas. So the standard requirements for an internal audit would still apply, but you could use this on a more continuous basis. Rather than doing big point-in-time audits, you could look to do more continuous audits throughout the year, reducing the burden of those big internal audits.
Awesome. Yeah, a couple more questions. It's exciting to see so many questions about this new product. Do you supply the validation information with the system to customers, and how do you validate the AI component?
So yes, we all of the frameworks and controls are validated by industry experts. We provide the validation, all of Qualio, we provide validation for the entire product, not just this area. Within AI, the validation is done both using people in terms of us working with industry experts to validate the responses, as well as things called evals, which is a more technical approach to validation, and we do provide all of that. As I said, we provide validation across the entire product. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I think this question also kind of touches on that. Just like, a question here, do you believe AI is able to catch all non-compliance? I'm not sure if you can elaborate on that.
Yeah. So what I would say to that is AI is a tool that is extremely useful in guiding us into areas that we need to look at, helping us to understand things we need to improve and how to improve them. Does it have all the answers, or is it going to find everything? No, it's not. You still need to be able to look at things yourself and assess them. There is no guarantee it will find everything, but it is a significant knowledge resource that is hugely helpful in this space.
Awesome. Yeah. And then lastly, when will this compliance feature be available?
We're looking at launching mid-September. I can't remember the exact date, 15th, 17th of September, or something to that effect.
Awesome. Cool. Well, we'll definitely keep attendees of this posted. So thank you so much. We have a couple other questions, Samantha, Ewan, if you have some time to answer them. We have some questions from earlier in the presentation. So first one is from Scott here. What is the effect? Oh, sorry, getting a few more. What is the effect of this change on combination products with oversight from CDER?
Oh, that's a very good question. Short answer is I don't know. You're talking about biologics, pharmaceutical combination. I will say 13485 may or may not be the standard for those products, but I mean, I will say for the QMS side, yes, it's very applicable. But for the product side, I don't know what kind of specific impact will that have for your product.
Yeah, I can add to what Yuan has mentioned about the combination part. So the QMSR includes conforming edits to the 21 CFR Part 4, which is for the combination products, which governs the CGMP requirements for the combination products. However, it does not change the underlying CGMP requirements for these products. For combination products under the CDER oversight, manufacturers must still comply with the applicable drug and biologic CGMPs. That's what Yuan was mentioning about. And the device-specific requirements referenced in Part 4, the shift to the QMSR simply, it means that the device CGMP portion now aligns with ISO 13485, which incorporates the Part A, 21 CFR Part 820. In summary, the compliance framework for combination products remains the same. So the update just remains the device-related expectations within the QMSR without altering core requirements. I hope this helps.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much to both of you. All right, we have another question here from Angelica. With companies that have limited resources and ability to implement this before February, do you recommend any main areas of focus to start with?
Yes, if resources are tight, and then if you want to prioritize the three specific areas, I would say like gap analysis against ISO 13485 2016, identify where your current QMS deviates from the ISO 13485, focus on critical areas like document control, control of records, CAPA management, that is the corrective and preventive actions, and complaints handling, and then training and awareness. So make sure your quality and regulatory teams they understand what QMSR changes and what does it apply or doesn't where they doesn't have to focus on. Train staff on any updated procedures or terminology shifts. So this is important from the training point of view. And then document controls and control of records, specifically for the control of records, like to comply with 21 CFR Part 820.35. This is the section where QMSR adds detail beyond ISO, so specifically around complaint records, UDI, and approval requirements. So addressing this early can prevent rework later, and you can also focus on the cheat sheet we have put in the slide deck. I think that also would be helpful for you. Maybe Yuan may want to add something to this.
Yeah, no, that's very comprehensive. The only thing I would add is, just focus on the differences in the FDA inspection, right? QSR, they can't touch your management review. They're not going to go after your internal audit. 13485, yeah, you can bet they will. So that's a main difference. So have your team, especially audit team, ready for that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This question, a bit of a cheeky one here. Why does it seem the QMSR is a secret when the FDA has published it?
I don't think it's a secret. Like Samasa was mentioning, it started early in 2018, got delayed by the pandemic, and then it was brought back to life or to attention last year before. So, well, I mean, I'm biased because I live, breathe in regulatory. It's definitely not a surprise for me. You could say more guidance or more clarity could have been better. I tend to agree, but I mean, it's government, right? So, what do you expect?
All right, those are some of the QMSR questions we have. We have some more questions about the compliance intelligence tool, Colin. So this one here, why not just use the paid version of ChatGPT?
Yeah, so ChatGPT, you can certainly try to use that, no problem. You won't know where your data is going necessarily, or is it being stored or reused. We use a private version of the Claude LLM, which is entirely within our infrastructure, so nothing leaves our network, and none of that information is stored or ever used to train anything. On top of that, the interactions we have through that LLM is we use prompt chaining, prompt flows, and we're moving into agentic workflows as well, which is all kind of, I suppose, more advanced interactions with AI to improve the results than I think you would get from working with an LLM in your own right, and give you more context of life sciences and give you more context of your organization as well.
And to what Colin has mentioned, from an auditor point of view, as I perform audits also on various different regulations, and I'm also part of the Standards Council of Canada here for the SE 210, where the ISO 13485 ISO standard is revised, and I'm one of the expert with that revision process. So as Colin mentioned, you can also think from a point of view where the subject matter experts had put a lot of effort in identifying the right information that needs to be provided in those frameworks. That's where the AI will be able to identify and then provide you the assessment. So the right information, the prompts that needs to be given, especially when it comes to the standards, that's where the all effort has been put together, and to provide the right assessment from the documents or the evidences that will be provided or reviewed by the AI. So that's where, so that the AI is not hallucinating, it's providing you the right information, which you will not find it from using an open AI.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Thank you.
maybe one more small point as well. Any interaction with AI, like I showed you when it returns, we have that symbol, so you can see where AI has come back to you. So if there's collaborating with a team, you know who has interacted with AI and where AI is interacting. Whereas if people are using ChatGPT in your team, you're not maybe sure who has used it or who hasn't and in what way. So
yeah, exactly.
Awesome. One more product. Oh, another product question. Is there an update process for the AI tool? I assume this is around, evolving regulations and things like that. So I guess, how is that updated?
Yeah, so the frameworks and controls that we publish and provide as part of the tool, if there is updates to them, we will publish updates to them, whether it's new versions, like when it comes to ISO standards, they tend to be released with the year, we will release a new version to you. As I said, the controls are mapped and reused, so in many cases, if there's an update, we would expect the controls to be reused, so it's only new controls that you will be looking at. And if there's any annexes or addendums or amendments, we would also be updating them for the ones that we produce.
All right. Those are all the questions that I'm seeing, and we're just a little bit over time today. So that just about wraps up today's session. A big thank you to all three of our speakers and to DQS for partnering with us for this webinar. We hope to see you all at another Qualio webinar in the future. We'll be in touch with slides and the recording, so you can watch on demand, and take care and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you,
Cheers.
everyone.
Thanks, Renee. Cheers. Bye-bye.